Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to unpack the completely fascinating history and theory of money, and we're going to do it by exploring a really unique source, a book called The Magic Coin. It's actually a story that brilliantly adapts Murray Rothbard's classic economic work, What Has Government Done to Our Money, into an adventure featuring a young girl named Lily and a time-traveling magical coin named Newton. So let's just dive right in and see how this simple story can untangle some incredibly complex economic forces. We start off with a shock that I think is pretty relatable to all of us. Lily goes to her local store and finds out that the price of her absolute favorite candy has jumped from just 1 penny all the way up to 25 cents. She is outraged. And right at that moment, she finds Newton, a magical silver coin who actually comes to life. Newton tells her, hey, the problem isn't the candy store owner, the problem is what has happened to our money. To prove it, he whisks her away on a time-traveling journey to uncover where money really comes from.
So, Newton transports Lily to their first stop, a remote tropical island where the famous fictional castaway, Robinson Crusoe, lives completely in isolation. Now you might be wondering, why in the world start an economic journey on a deserted island? Well, to untangle the crazy complexities of finance, the source argues we first have to strip everything down to the absolute bare bones. Think about it. According to the story, Crusoe doesn't need money because he has absolutely no one to trade with. He needs food, he needs water, he needs a roof over his head. If you gave him a giant pile of gold coins, they'd be completely worthless to him. So the crucial takeaway here is that money is fundamentally just a tool. It's a product of trade. Without human exchange, money simply has no reason to exist.
Okay, so to see where trade actually kicks off, Newton and Lily jump forward to a primitive village. Here, people are actively trading with each other, but they don't have coins or paper bills yet. They're relying entirely on direct barter, trading eggs for clothes or shoes for food. But as Lily quickly observes, this village is facing a major economic hurdle.
The source outlines how tough barter actually is in practice. Imagine you have a basket of eggs, and you really want some new clothes. You find the clothes maker, but they don't want your eggs, they want shoes. Well, you're stuck. Economists call this the double coincidence of wants. For a direct trade to happen, you have to find someone who has exactly what you want, who also wants exactly what you have. It's like a giant puzzle where the pieces just don't fit.
But humans are pretty clever, and the story brilliantly illustrates the ingenious solution they came up with. Let's trace it out. Abigail has eggs but wants clothes. Joshua has shoes but wants eggs. Lauren has clothes but wants shoes. Abigail connects the dots here. She trades her eggs for Joshua's shoes, even though she has absolutely no desire to wear them. She only takes those shoes because she knows Lauren will accept them in exchange for the clothes.
This incredibly clever move by Abigail is a concept called indirect exchange. You trade for something not to consume it, but just to use it as a stepping stone to get what you actually want. Murray Rothbard describes this as the marvelous instrument that opens the door for money to emerge on the market. Eventually, people figure out that things like precious metals are way easier to carry, divide, and trade than, say, a basket of eggs, and those goods organically evolve into money.
So, let's look at how this builds across the timeline. We've gone from the total isolation of Crusoe's island into the direct barter of the primitive village, evolving into commodity money in 17th century London before arriving at the fiat and central banking of the modern era.
Newton brings Lily to 17th century London. Now, trade is absolutely booming. People aren't trading shoes anymore, they're using precious metals like gold and silver. But let's be real, lugging around heavy bags of metal coins is risky and exhausting, so people start depositing their precious metals into goldsmith banks for safekeeping. When you drop off your gold, the goldsmith gives you a paper receipt. Very quickly, people realize, hey, it's way easier to just hand someone the paper receipt at the market rather than running back to the bank to withdraw heavy gold. These receipts become widely accepted in trade. They become what the source calls money substitutes. Paper begins circulating as money, but at this stage, it's 100% backed by the real gold sitting securely in the vault. But human nature being what it is, the bankers start to notice something interesting. They realize that depositors rarely ever come back to claim all their gold at the exact same time. This creates a massive fork in the road. On one side, you have 100% reserve banking, where the paper notes exactly equal the gold in the vault. On the other side, you have fractional reserve banking, where bankers decide to print extra paper receipts for gold that doesn't actually exist and lend them out to earn interest.
Rothbard playfully but quite sharply refers to this fractional reserve banking as profitable hanky-panky. Why? because these pseudo-receipts flood into the market looking exactly like the real ones. The bank has literally artificially expanded the money supply out of thin air just to make a profit.
So what's the consequence of this hanky-panky? The story shows Lily a terrifying stampede, a classic bank run. If people catch wind that a bank has printed way more paper receipts than it actually has gold, panic sets in immediately. Trusting depositors all rush the bank to get their physical gold back at the exact same time. And because the bank loaned out more than it holds, it collapses, and everyday people lose their wealth. To see how leaders historically dealt with the chaos of bank runs, Lily and Newton peek into a secret, dark room where politicians and bankers are having a meeting. Now, you might think they're meeting to figure out how to force banks to keep 100% of the gold in reserve, right? Well, according to the source material, that is not what happened.
Rather than fixing the lack of gold, the source argues these leaders created a central bank to effectively cartelize the whole banking system. What does a central bank do? It acts as a bank for the government. If fractional banks get into trouble, the central bank bails them out. It buys up government debt, letting politicians spend freely. And how does it fund this? It just prints its own money right out of thin air, which the book argues is basically a sneaky way to tax everyday people through inflation.
And this unchecked printing of money, it has severe consequences. Newton takes Lily to a chaotic street, showing her the completely destructive force of hyperinflation. When the central bank continuously pumps new paper money into the economy, the value of every existing dollar absolutely plummets, prices skyrocket, and basic everyday shopping turns into a total nightmare. The book outlines the steps of what Rothbard calls the crack-up boom. First, the supply of money shoots up. Consequently, the value of that money tanks. Because it's literally losing value by the hour, consumers rush to spend their cash immediately before it hits zero. Finally, the monetary system breaks down entirely, and people are forced back into bartering or finding foreign currencies. To put this into perspective and show just how worthless paper money can get during extreme hyperinflation, the story uses a crazy historical anecdote from the 1920s Weimar Republic in Germany. A woman brings a wheelbarrow fully loaded with paper cash to the grocery store just to buy basic supplies. She leaves it outside for a second, and a thief comes along. But the thief doesn't steal the money. He dumps all the cash out onto the street just so he can steal the empty wheelbarrow. The physical wheelbarrow was actually worth more than the entire mountain of printed paper. Seeing this total economic breakdown, Lily naturally asks the million-dollar question: how do we fix it? Newton explains that while it's not easy, the fundamental fix is clear. You have to stop the money printing. According to the text, a society must abandon hyperinflated money and put strict, unbendable limits on how much currency can be created, totally removing the temptation for that profitable hanky-panky.
At the end of the journey, Lily finally zips back to her own time, standing right back outside that local candy store. She takes Newton, the magic coin, and flips him over in her hand. For the very first time, she sees the design quietly engraved on his back, a perfectly balanced scale. And this beautifully illustrates the core message of the source material. That balanced scale represents sound money. Historically, sound money was based on actual, physical weight, like real ounces of gold or silver. But on a deeper level, the source asserts that sound money represents justice and honest trade. It's a system untouched by the artificial trickery of central banks or government inflation. Under sound money, the market, meaning everyday people making everyday trades, decides what money is, not a government decree.
Which brings us to the ultimate question posed by our source. When we look back at the history of money, from Robinson Crusoe all the way to modern hyperinflation, we really have to ask ourselves, should the market freely decide what our money is, based on mutual trust and value? Or should the government have the power to just create it out of thin air? We'll leave you with that provocative thought to consider, especially the next time you notice the price of your favorite candy inexplicably going up. Thanks for joining us on this explainer, and keep learning.